Can start. Welcome. I'd like to call to order the Standing Committee, Transportation Committee meeting on July 27th, 2022. We have Alderman Savage, myself, and we are missing Alderwoman Rhonda Pindell-Charles today. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Just second it.
Oh, second. Sorry. I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next up on our agenda is approval of minutes from 4/13/22.
I will move approval of the minutes.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes approved. And approval of minutes from 6/8/22.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes approved. Very exciting today that we're having a presentation, ID 15522, bird bikes.
Thanks. So we should just go and dive in. Well, thanks for the chance to share where we are with the program. I'm Chief of Comprehensive Planning, Eric Lashinsky, and I'm here with a few other people. I guess should introduce themselves separately.
My name is Phil Sung. I'm a Senior Government Partnerships Manager at Bird, overseeing the Annapolis market, among other markets in the DMV.
And I'm Brian Callahan in the Mayor's Office.
Hillary Raftovich, Mayor's Office.
So Brian and myself have been involved in the program from the very beginnings, and Hillary has been actively involved now the program is up and running, and we work closely with Phil as our account representative from Bird. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on the program, just to clarify how we got here. Apologies, Councilwoman, for using this this but
No helmet on.
You were in a parking lot that was coned off. So this is a photo from the launch event in mid-May with Mayor Buckley. And I'm going to hand it over to Phil after a few slides to just give more background about Bird and how the system operates. But I do want to clarify how we got to this point. I regularly hear misconceptions about the program and the process that led us to this. And we will be sharing some data that gives us a hint as to how things are working and the success of the program. And then we'll end with some thoughts about where we're going with this. So first, the rationale for this program. Most folks in Annapolis who've been living here for a few years would recall we had a bike share program prior to me working here before COVID. It was called the Pace Bike System. There were dedicated docks at, I think, 10 locations around the city. It went essentially bankrupt during COVID, and the company was acquired and just vacated the program. And so ever since then, we've been talking about activating a new program. And the reasons for that are to provide more transportation options. That's really the number one. We live on a peninsula. None of this is probably new to you, but for folks listening, transportation options in this city are limited. We don't have a bike or sidewalk system that can get you anywhere you want. Transit is limited in many cases. And so it's another option to give people a way of getting places without a car, frankly, if they don't have a car or if they would rather not use their car. So it helps minimize congestion and emissions. there's a fundamental need, what we call the last mile. When people take a bus somewhere that might not get them all the way there, this is an option to get them that last mile or quarter mile or half mile. If they want to go, just to a convenience store that's close by, this is a great tool for that. So we want to integrate with the options that are already out there. Ultimately, we do want to just provide more choices and the alternative to using a personal vehicle in the city. We wanted to get this program up and running for a variety of reasons, but the big one was that we have our garage under construction, and it sent various ripples through transportation in and around downtown. We're trying to help people park before they come into downtown, take alternative modes of transportation to get to downtown. So this is one of those alternatives, and we timed it to launch a few other options at the same time. The rebranded circulator bus that people have seen around, that's more frequent with the magenta wrap, and then the Annapolis Go app, which is an on-demand shuttle service that was developed by AMRP, the City Dock and Hillman Garage design team. So to some extent, we're trying things during this period to take pressure off of how people get around with a personal vehicle, and we're going to see what sticks. And I think my feeling is that this program has had an immediate impact on how people get around, just based on the data we've seen. So I see people sometimes opine that this was something that happened overnight, this launching of this e-bike and e-scooter program. It didn't really happen overnight. There was a lot of history. As I mentioned, we started thinking about it when the last system went offline. It was challenging to do anything during COVID. These programs were not being used as heavily, but came to a point where we knew we needed to get this up and running, and we issued the RFP at the end of last year. The proposals were due in mid-January. We had 6 proposals from it was kind of a who's who of successful companies operating around the country and internationally. We shortlisted 2 of those proposals, Bird and another company, and then we ultimately selected Bird in late March, and that committee included myself, Brian Callahan, Jen Fate in the Public Works Department, and Tanya Osman, my counterpart at Anne Arundel County, the dedicated bike ped manager. And then we launched it mid-May, and so we did a lot of things to get that going. The launch was timed with Bike to Work Week in mid-May, as well as launching these other mobility options that I mentioned before. So there were 2 events over May 17th and 18th, and one of them was with the county down at City Dock. Just briefly, why Bird? It was hard to get through all these proposals. In some ways, they're all talking about the same technology, the same way of working in every city they operate. What distinguished Bird were just a few quick things. They had a track record of working in cities like Annapolis. Many of these companies are touting their work in bigger places that may not have anything to common with Annapolis. So the fact that Bird was in Salisbury and Cambridge, Maryland, historic cities in Virginia. This is image of Salisbury's mayor. They were sort of on the bandwagon, so to speak, before us. But we reached out to past clients, or current clients of Bird. They had resounding positive reviews. In fact, Bird was one of 4 companies operating Montgomery County. The staff from Montgomery County we met with said Bird was by far the most responsive of all the companies that they were permitting to operate in the county. They have a business model that's somewhat unique, where they hire local entrepreneurs to be the fleet operators who have kind of a profit-sharing agreement with Bird, and so it's a way of investing in workforce here in Annapolis. And then finally, they offered the city a profit sharing agreement where up to $50,000 in revenue, I believe it's 1% or up to $50,000 annually, is provided back to the city from their net revenues that goes into our bike facilities investments. So that seemed like a win for the city. And so just to reiterate this, to clarify, this program is operating at no cost to the city. That was really important from the get-go. And we were also very clear that this program should have both e-bikes and e-scooters, or to prioritize e-bikes, I should clarify. Many cities that people will see these vehicles, and they may only have scooters, no e-bikes, but in terms of promoting cycling as a viable alternative, we felt having e-bikes is a gateway to actually doing more regular cycling. So that was one idea. Just my last slide before I hand over to Phil. Our summer intern, Agnes, and I went around town yesterday and just photographed birds in all of the many locations where you'd find them. Just a sampling here to show kind of where somebody might find them around town. And they're all, the contexts vary dramatically. I was happy to see that there were very few conflicts on this given day in terms of blocking sidewalks. And I think that there's been a learning curve there in terms of how the program should operate, where people are expected to leave these vehicles. And there are bonus points that you get credit for your next rides by parking them well, and that may have had something to do with this. But I'm going to hand it over to Phil, and then we'll have time for questions after. So let's see. I guess I can advance it for
Okay,
you.
great. Thanks so much, Eric. So I'm here today to just explain a little bit more about what Bird is, kind of our operations to date here, and just to give you a sampling of essentially how we're going to operate here in Annapolis. So just to start, what Bird is we're a dockless electric micromobility vehicle sharing company. And our mission at the end of the day, it's to make cities more livable and bring communities together through affordable and environmentally friendly transportation. As Eric mentioned, it's solving that last mile problem. It's reducing congestion, improving air quality, and overall the quality of life in cities and where people live and move. So this first mile, last mile, just to explain a little bit more, the bus network systems, transit systems, it gets you to these hard-built, expensive infrastructure, but maybe that last mile to home or your destination, it's a walk. And we all know the hot summers here in the DMV. Sometimes you don't want to arrive to work or wherever you're going with a wet shirt. So the scooter comes into handy when you do need to get that last mile quickly, safely. It's not a hassle to repark, so this is really the benefit of the dockless model, where you don't have to worry about finding a dock. You could park it anywhere. Obviously, it has to be free from blocking sidewalks, accessible ramps, that kind of thing, but that's the benefit of this dockless model. And again, it's connecting to transit systems or going one way wherever you need to go.
I would just add that when we were evaluating how to operate this program, what kind of program to have, the dockless was very attractive because it also enables us to tweak the system as we go. We're not bound by hard infrastructure. We can make changes as we need to, as it comes out. It's a very flexible, nimble system.
That's right. So what our story is, we founded this industry in 2017, and we saw instant success. And today, it's a global operation. You could see some of the numbers here: 5 continents, 25 countries, over 100 million rides, and we're a publicly traded company on New York Stock Exchange. So this map here, we're really a regional presence here in the DMV area. So you could just kind of see a sampling of the population sizes that we operate in. This isn't just for big metropolitan areas. Yes, we operate in Washington, and we recently opened in Baltimore. But this is really a solution that should be available and open to any size of city, no matter how many people live in it. So riding a Bird scooter, it's very simple. And even before getting to that point, please try riding one. I think it's impossible not to smile when you're first riding it. One, because it's so easy, and secondly, it's something new. And even my wife, I'll give her an example. Like I'm a huge fan of Capital Bike Share in DC. I like to ride around the city. My wife doesn't ride bikes, but scooters was really something that she hooked onto just because of the ease. So how you would find a scooter, you'd obviously find a scooter available on the public right-of-way here. You'd open up the app, you'd sign up with your email address, and then from there, you're able to add a payment method, sign in, and begin your ride that way. To end the ride, you'd take a picture. I think we have a next slide here. But talking a little bit about the solutions for that, we'll get to the end of ride pictures later. But I think the benefit of Bird, and speaking on behalf of the company, we're constantly innovating and really thinking about safety, thinking about ease of use, thinking about what cities care about. So just a couple of these solutions that we want to highlight here is one, it's a warm-up mode. So our vehicles, if you ride one, you'll tell that they are pretty strong, but we do have a warm-up mode where it's a little bit more gentle acceleration. So if you are riding for the first time, it's a little bit easier to use. Safe Start is another, again, these are tools for the city to consider. But Safe Start is it's a tool we have an app to make sure that one is coherent enough to operate a scooter vehicle. And we usually operate these in during times when people are going out, nightlife, that sort of thing. And then parking management, we offer a slew of different tools at the city's disposal that can ensure that if you are experiencing parking issues in certain locations, that we can ramp up the tools in there to make sure that parking is compliant. And I would call it, the only thing I would mention about that is at the end of the day, we are trying to increase rides. So these are, again, at the city's disposal to really think about and where these things need to be placed so that this program is compliant and successful at the end of the day. So the dockless model, we spoke a little bit about the benefits before. Obviously, you have to follow the rules of the road like a bike. But I think the most beneficial thing is literally you can go to where you need to go. And we're going to speak a little bit about kind of the carryover effects of that. But the best thing is you don't have to worry about theft. With a personal scooter, I've experienced it before. You go to a restaurant, you're constantly keeping your eye on your bike or your scooter. But with a shared dockless model, you drop it off and somebody else can come take it, and you'll have one available. Just find one, the next Bird on your app, and you'll be able to ride. So the fleet manager model, I think Eric mentioned that this is a bit unique. So this is, it's developed in partnership with our cities, but the fleet manager model, what this is, it's a local entrepreneur, someone who's very familiar with the city, that they have the infrastructure, they have the vehicles, they have the skills to be able to maintain, fix, charge our scooter vehicles. And these are thoroughly vetted fleet operators. And they're given, we have a revenue sharing model with them. So it's not just a gig labor type of thing. These are substantive businesses that do pay well. And this is kind of something that separates us apart, I believe, from other operators. So speaking to the significant benefits of this dockless model, so over 50% of our riders using a Bird, they take it to visit a local business. And the majority of them, this is according to a survey that we've conducted, say that riding a Bird actually made them more likely to visit that business. There's also obviously job creation with the local fleet managers that we have. And they also, as the operations ramp up here, they'll be able to hire to make sure that they're able to maintain the fleet size that they're responsible for. Job access too, we really want this to be a serious transportation option and mobility option for citizens. So this is a way for folks maybe who can't afford car payments, insurance payments. This is a way for them to get to work, and we really want this to be a serious option for them. And obviously the environmental benefits of using an emissionless battery-powered vehicle. So when we design the vehicle, it's really to consider all the needs of all of our customers, whether direct and indirect. What I mean by that is obviously for riders, they want something safe, fun, environmentally friendly, convenient, that's nearby. For us, we want a safe vehicle that's very easy to track, very easy to repair and maintain. But I think where focus today is just think about what the communities need. And they want a safe vehicle. They want something sustainable. They want something that support the city goals and a responsible use of the public right-of-way here. So with that in mind, so we have several customer service options. So one is we have a community mode in our app. So if you do see a bird, please download the app. And within the app, even if you don't intend to ride, you are able to voice concern through the app directly. Also, if there is a bird that you're seeing that whether it's parked incorrectly or whatever issue that you have, there is a contact information on every single vehicle. We would just ask that you provide the QR code so that we can track it easier and be able to resolve the issue quicker. But again, we want to be responsive. We're here in person today, and this is a partnership that we wish to be lasting and meaningful for our entire permit here. Community pricing is another thing that kind of goes to the community needs. So this is a program where we offer 50% off rides for veterans, low-income people. We actually have a flyer in the back there that specifies who our target audience is for this. But again, we have easy sign-up information, and we could talk about a little bit more about this during questions. Finally, I just want to give just a snapshot overview of the operations we've seen through some data here. Just some interesting tidbits that to just point out to the committee members here. But this is rider snapshot throughout the week. You can clearly see that we see the most activity on the weekends with the highest average rides and ride durations at that time. Community pricing is something we want to improve during our time here. We've had 15 enrollments over the past month and a half or so. And 8 rides per community pricing rider, which is great to see that they're using the program and that they're using these rides for whatever mobility needs that they have. And finally, another thing that we do track is commuter rides. This isn't a perfect metric, but it's something that we've crafted internally to see, are these people using our scooters to take, so we track whether it's a common route that this particular user takes, and then if it's between commuting hours. And we found that 320 commuter rides were taken this month in July so far. This is just a heat map. I'm sure Eric can give you a little bit more meaning behind these things, and we could revisit this at the end. But this type of data is available to Eric, to Brian, to Hillary, to the city, to be able to understand what are the travel patterns on these scooters. And I think this would be a great way to inform future infrastructure investments, to be able to see, are we servicing the entire city? So there's a lot of questions you could ask of the data, and our data that our dashboards can provide those types of insights to city decision makers.
Yeah, the dashboard's been helpful. That's where we pulled this information from. I mean, I think that right now, clearly there's a concentration of the vehicles, both at the beginning and end of the day in the downtown area and in Eastport. You can see that the end rides are spreading out farther to the edges of the city. And that's kind of a clue to where I think we need to take the program ultimately to make it more accessible to more people. But there's some logic in providing these in parts of the city where we have a clear concentration of pedestrian traffic, which maximizes use. But we get this map is updated, in real time, and it's been very interesting to see.
And this is just another map to a heat map of routes, rather. Again, just further insights from what the rides are. And I'd say it's still early in the program, so this data will get richer over time, and you'll be able to determine patterns more. I think it is a very seasonal business, so there is a higher ridership in the summer. So I think it'll be interesting to see and ask questions of this data as the program continues.
Yeah, we requested this data specifically. This is not part of the dashboard, but the thinking was that if we knew which streets were being more heavily used by riders, it could reinforce investments in those public right-of-ways and say, well, are riders using streets that don't have adequate sidewalks or street bike lanes, or where are people going with these vehicles? And the challenge in getting us this data, this kind of visualization, is that Bird collects so much data every second of this vehicle use that it's just a tremendous amount of processing power needed to churn out a visualization like this. So they just did 1 week in June to give us a sample of what that looks like. And we can, I think, get this for other time periods if we need, but this was just a glimpse of how it looked that week.
So we'll just end here. I don't think there's any slides after this, but just a couple key metrics. Again, we're really early in our operations here, but you could see, I mean, there's no comparison to these. So these are really kind of just snapshots to consume, and it'll be fun to revisit these over time. But you can see over 20,000 miles ridden. That's these are miles not ridden in a car, not doing obnoxious emissions from vehicles. It's got a lot of first-time riders in the city, 2,400, around 2,400 first riders and 3,300 unique riders. And I think the stat that jumps out at me here is the average rides per rider. So they're revisiting these vehicles. They're seeing that this can be a solution for me in the future. And this is something that we hope would increase during our operations here. And Brian loved to point out that on 23rd, it was the busiest day with 328 rides. And we hope that number gets higher as we go into the summer and bring more vehicles into the city.
So that's the presentation. I would just also add that Anne Arundel County is very eager to expand into the parole part of Anne Arundel County, potentially other areas of the county adjacent to Annapolis, but it seems that the parole area is their priority. They're working with, in collaboration with our law office and Bird on an agreement, but that is not finalized yet. It's just something I anticipate moving forward. And the other thing that we're looking at, just as I mentioned, trying to expand the program to, or at least with the vehicles we have currently, we should have said earlier, but the program currently only has 50 e-bikes and 50 e-scooters. That is the extent of the vehicles that Bird is allowed to have on the street. They charge them regularly, so when we see the data, that people are more aware of that opportunity. So that's something we're going to, Bird has a budget for marketing, and we can work with them on events to really get that information out there. But that's just kind of the general update on where we're headed with the program.
Great. Thank you so much. I know I have a couple of questions, and I think my colleagues do as well. My first question is this. I know that you can call if you see a vehicle or a bike that's been in a place for a long time or wrong place. What happens when nobody calls on that? And is that vehicle still charging if it's not being used? Is it holding its charge?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So first, if you open the app, you will see the charge level of each vehicle. That'll give you a range of how far you need to go. But absolutely. So if there is a vehicle that's not bothering anyone, but it's in the same location for days, hours, days, our fleet managers are tracking these. So for us, it's a problem because it's not revenue generating. And I think for the community, it doesn't look good to have a Bird that's not moving. So our fleet manager is actively monitoring vehicles, and if they're not moving, they'll go out and collect them.
Okay.
I think that, Phil, you can expand on this, but I believe their interface that their fleet manager uses prioritizes the vehicles that have been idle longer than others, and so they kind of bounce to the top of the list. There's sort of a bounty on them, if you will.
That's right. So we do have an internal metric system that gives an idea of which vehicles need to be collected, similar to a bounty system. So we are tracking and monitoring and prioritizing vehicles that need to be collected, whether charged, just moved to a better location. So it's something that we actively look at.
Okay. There's been one on a street in my neighborhood for the last week.
Okay. Thank you.
So maybe that one is moving in the middle of the night.
Yeah, no, well, let's talk after. We
Yeah.
make sure to take care of that.
Another complaint that I've had is that there are kids using them, and they're not using them as electric bikes. They're pushing them down the street. Is there any way to halt that, or is there? I'm guessing it's probably not very good for the bike not being used as an electric bike.
Yeah, so there's going to be growing pains like that in the city. I think for us, we just want to make sure these vehicles are safe. And if it is a persistent issue, just to be able to send us the picture or just to voice the complaint to make sure that it can be addressed.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Where are they taken to charge, and how often do you end up needing to do that?
Yeah, so our local fleet manager has a presence in the Annapolis area. So there's a warehouse in the city, and he's the one who collects and charges those vehicles back at that warehouse.
And how often do you have to, like, what's the range of some of these vehicles?
Yeah, so if I open up right now, like the max range of how far you can go, it could go up to like 14, 15 miles. And really depending on the charge, it really varies from like 3 to 15. So if you do need to go somewhere further, I'd probably walk to a scooter that has that range that I need. But you asked about how often they're charged. Yeah, so if they do dip to a level, the fleet manager, the way that our revenue sharing works with our fleet manager is if we're making money, he's making money. So our incentives are aligned in a way where we want our vehicles constantly being used. So he's actively monitoring. We have the internal metric system to prioritize which vehicles need maintenance and charging. So that's kind of the system that we have in place.
And where are they placed in I guess, overnight?
Yeah, so it really varies. So usually in the morning, the fleet manager will go out and do his checks. He probably has his internal processes in place. But in terms of locations, you'll see that they are concentrated right now in the downtown area. But I think for us, we will want to continue to work with Eric and the city to make sure that the considerations of the community needs are also being considered in that. But generally, we are placing them in places where there is foot traffic, where they are going to be ridden, but also want to focus on making sure the city needs are being addressed and incorporated too.
Yeah, I was also just going to add that, the common theme, if you look at the places where they stage them, I mean, they tend to be these like bump outs of the sidewalk area or places where there's a extra space that is not along the pedestrian walk area, or they try to find these places that aren't going to be an impediment to pedestrian traffic. So, but always in the public right of way. That's really
That's right. And it is really important when we deploy that it's not blocking pedestrian right of way. It's not blocking accessible ramps. These are things that we put into our deployment restrictions and guidelines. But I think the thing that we are wary of are the end of rides. So if you do see an improperly parked scooter, to take a picture, and we have systems in place to penalize riders that aren't parking properly. So there's guidelines in place to make sure that the right of way for pedestrians and other bikers are being protected.
I'm curious how the fleet manager determines where to place them. I mean, I think that it would make sense to put some, I'm just thinking my ward, but also this impact ward 4, maybe even 2, but work with some of the shopping centers that have ample parking, too much parking, and just use a couple spots to put some of these. Because I'm thinking in my neighborhood, the giant shopping center there is kind of it already is kind of a transit hub because the bus stops there, but I know people would most likely walk there and pick up something to go ride downtown. I imagine in Ward 4, people do the same thing with the Safeway there. Ward 2, I don't know, maybe Growls or something, something over there better. But those, I think, would be. So I don't know. Are those kind of transit hubs factored in by the fleet manager?
Yeah, so I think that's eventually where we want to get to. But I think right now the program is starting small, and we want to make sure that the growing pains are settled before we expand. So I think that's definitely something to consider in the future as we increase our fleet size and get it up to the place where we want it to be.
Yeah, well, because I think if you're focusing them downtown, I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of that would be, because as far as tourists coming to visit, they're coming, they're parking downtown. They might use the bikes to get around downtown, but they're not really going outside of downtown. So if these are going to be geared, or at least if a portion of them are going to be geared towards the residents, you'd have to find some kind of hubs near the neighborhoods. Something like Eastport Shopping Center would be one hub down in Eastport. I think even my residents would probably, much as Eastport might not like this, they'd probably be willing to park at the shopping center, get a bike and bike over the Eastport Bridge, or again, do it from the Giant. But in any case, my point is, I guess, just because I think that's going to completely change your metrics as far as where people are riding, as far as the residents. That for me would be, that'd be, at least for me, I think where I would like to see the program go, because frankly, if you're a tourist downtown, it's a very walkable city once you're downtown. I'm not really worried about facilitating, and we already have some circulator, but we don't have a way, except for a bus system, which doesn't really fulfill this role either. Our bus system is more for getting people to work outside the city than it is to get them around internal in the city. So there's that void of how do we get residents around town. And so the geographic boundaries, is that for the entire city? Then anybody in the city can, as long as there's a vehicle there, they can use it.
Yeah, so in the app, you'll see the operating zone, and it is the city boundary. Yeah.
Okay. So question about the profit sharing. You mentioned that Eric, you mentioned that it's going towards the money, any profits that are shared go towards the bike network. But what measures do we have internally to make sure that's how that money is being spent? Is there some kind of fund that's being held to put that money into?
Basically, Brian and I need to remember. It's we talked about it with finance recently because Bird had reached out to ask for W-9 and ACH, routing information, because I think it's a quarterly transfer of funds. So they just wanted to get prepared for that. What I worked out with Jody Dickinson, finance director, is that at the end of the year, when we know the total, or essentially in budgeting season, when we know the annual amount that we've gotten to based on the records, they'll put that, finance will put that amount in the Trail Connections fund in the CIP. That's kind of our catch-all for bikeways improvements. But we need to stay on top of them for that. I do spend about 30% of my time on mobility projects, particularly trail initiatives. And I'm always looking for money. So I'm pretty confident I'll be staying on top of it. But that's maybe the only issue.
Well, yeah, and just, if it's not in a specific fund, it's going to go right back to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. And I know you don't want that to happen.
No.
And neither, I think, would we. But I wasn't aware of the trail connection. I'm not quite sure how that, maybe my finance colleagues know, but
I guess it's not a fund. It's not an enterprise fund. It's just a CIP project number, that
like a rolling total.
And generally the funding in there is grant funding, but it's something that we've had for a number of years. So as we have projects that we're working on, and they're not a marquee trail project like the West East Express. That was actually just recently created as a separate CIP item, but everything has kind of fallen. All the trail projects have fallen under the Trail Connections budget item. So,
okay,
CIP.
But maybe I'll leave that to the finance committee to look.
We're certainly open to other ideas on that. I agree that we really don't want this money to fall in the general fund. That would defeat the purpose. I'm
just not sure. We'd have to have a conversation with Ms. Dickinson. I'm not sure if that's the best mechanism to use, but in any case, something to think about. My last point is just at some point, I'd like to see some kind of comprehensive look at our transportation in the city. I feel like, and this is I love this program. I think it's incredibly worthwhile. Glad we have it. But I feel like there's just a lot of, it's haphazard right now how we have, not this program, but just for the citywide, right? We have this program, which it sounds like for the moment is more geared towards, frankly, I think tourists in downtown. We have our bus system, which is more geared towards getting people out of the city. And then we have the circulator, which goes around downtown. And then we have the purple bus right now, which gets people, I guess, pretty much downtown, but also a little bit outside. Then we have the Annapolis Go rideshare. It's all, I feel like they're all being done independently without any kind of analysis of where's the overlap, where's the efficiency, because I'm pretty certain that we most likely are cannibalizing ourselves as far as they're impacting our bus system. So we need to, I think, look at our bus system to say, well, do we need all these large buses that are serving only a handful of people a day? Maybe we just focus those on a few key routes. Same thing with the circulator. We know the circulator, I think, has been impacting, but it's the same thing. Like we've been talking about Annapolis Go, I think, with the shuttles about expanding where they go in the city. But it's just, again, we're not looking to each program to see where we can find the most efficient way forward. So that's, do you know if there's I know you're just one department, which I know is part of the issue. I think Plan and Zoning is doing their thing, DOT is doing theirs, and I'm not sure how much discussion there's been yet about citywide comprehensive look at this.
Well, we certainly have very similar recommendations in the comprehensive plan update that I've been working on. And I agree with you. We have a lot of modes that aren't really coordinated, so to speak, right now. I will say, if you look at where, these bird vehicles are frequently located close to bus stops. That is one thing I should highlight. That's something we've been trying with. That's an area that we're going to try to improve on. And that's an immediate action that we can take. We are doing you probably know about the Ferry Feasibility study, which, although it's focused on the electric ferry, it is going to be looking at transit connections to the potential ferry. So it's not citywide, but it's really focusing on Eastport and acknowledging that if you're trying to have a new ferry service and people anticipating it'll be popular and people may want to drive to that we should have ways of getting to it that would sort of defeat the purpose. And so that will definitely be the scope for that is a coordinated look at how transit, all these modes can link with that future electric ferry. So I think I think the proposals are due, they were due this week. So I haven't seen them yet, but either today or tomorrow. So I think that project could give us a seed for what that kind of coordination should look like elsewhere. I do regularly talk to Kwaku and Transportation Department about these. We have good communication, and I think ultimately it all does tie back to our Annapolis transit and making sure that that's sort of the backbone of our alternative mobility system. So that's what I can offer for now.
Thank you. And I want to apologize. I failed to recognize Alderwoman Tierney at the
Quite
beginning of
all
the
right.
meeting. Sorry about that. Alderwoman Tierney?
Thanks. Thank you. On that subject, though, for clarity, my understanding is under the AMRP agreement, the public-private partnership umbrella, if you will, there is one of the contractors is VIA, and their charge is mobility. And as part of that mobility is the VIA on-call system. I'm not sure how much of the additional the purple bus circulator is part of that, but am I correct in saying that
That's right.
That's
I believe they are funding the additional service for the circulator.
yeah. So
as
that-
well as the Annapolis Go on-demand service.
So that objective is to get people downtown, knowing that they can't drive their car. So, but I agree, there are, other wheels, no pun intended, turning and all. So I'm here really to represent my residents. So I am going to start off with a compliment. Hi, Ellie. I hope you are well. We've spoken a few times via email. I live at Pinckney Street, 51 Pinckney Street. I just wanted to let you know that I'm enjoying the new electric bikes and scooters around town. They are easy to use, easy to access, and I think they're a great way to explore areas further away from downtown without having to get in a car. So I'll follow that. I'll follow that with my little folder that has some of the concerns. One of them being, I have residents that they're not, they're not smart on apps and all. And what do I tell them as far as the most efficient way? What do you suggest is the most efficient way to report a scooter in their front lawn? Is there at the website, a phone number? I think the phone number's on the website. Is there any sort of easy?
Yes, so there is a email address on our scooters, and then also there, I'll make sure you get the email address that they can send any invoice or complaints to.
So go to the scooter and just and
Yes,
send to that email.
and there's a phone number on there as well if they're.
311 Annapolis, is that right? 311 Annapolis at bird.com or
Bird.co.
I have
Bird.co.
a standard email with all the links.
that's the email that we've been getting out when, I get some of these, Hillary gets most of these kind of comments amongst city staff, but, when people want, that's the email we send them, and it goes to all the bird operator staff.
I know your vehicles say do not ride on sidewalks, but could we have some clarity there? Because I know that we allow bikes on sidewalks per state of Maryland, and we actually put in local legislation to marry up with that.
Yes, so that's a standard feature on all our scooters, and I would say that even as a rider, like riders are going to ride what's most comfortable and safe for them. So it's something that's standard on our scooters, but at the same time, we do make sure that all the local regs and rules are on our app so that they can reference that when they need to.
I just wanted to say that publicly, that they are allowed to be on the sidewalk.
Thank you.
Per our own code, basically, right?
Thank you.
I get a lot of concerns about younger riders. I know it says 18, or over. Do you have any sort of, firewall to prevent that, or how do you address that issue?
Yes, so we do have tools in place. I think we are careful to use them. Again, we defer to the city on how those tools are implemented and used. But it is something that we are aware of, and we do have some tools in place in the app to make sure that can be curbed and addressed or mitigated as needed.
So it's up to the city to decide whether we want to implement.
It's something
that.
we work with the cities on, and I think we do see it. And if, for example, I think, so if we do see someone under 18 riding a scooter, we would just ask for the QR code to make sure and see, was this authorized? How was this paid for? That kind of thing. So it's something we would look into.
Okay. And the only other thing is, how far out do you go? Sometimes, where was I? And I saw one. I was like, whoa. It was past the where TJ Maxx is out there, past, wherever. Like, is there still a limit? Do you have a invisible fence or something?
Right. So how our geofences work is the vehicle will come to a stop once you release the accelerator.
Right.
So if it did go beyond city boundaries, the rider could most likely have just pressed the accelerator until the scooter died or stopped and then just decided to ditch the scooter there. So that's likely what would happen there. But we do have an active geofence in place within Annapolis to make sure that operations only take
So it
place there.
stops at the county line? Yeah.
Yes, they really shouldn't pass Solomon's Island Road. There
Right.
shouldn't be any.
Yeah.
But
Right, yeah.
they would have coasted for a while.
But I could see them going to the hospital someday, you know. Anyway, so that's, and I think you had the same questions from your residents early on. I think things have died down a little bit.
Yes.
Most of the initial complaints were, you know, kids having fun with them, and but that's sort of died down. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for taking time today and talking, and it's been a growing and learning experience, I know, for most of the city, and it is calming down quite a bit from the first week. The first week I was glad that you weren't here. Are there any other questions? I know we have a couple of members of our audience. I'm open to questions if you have them. I think you
come
have
up
to go to the
mic.
microphone, please. And can you give us your name and address, please?
I'm Carol Kelly. I'm a resident of Row, 1903.
Just turn your mic on.
Oh, I'm greener light. I live at 1903 Town Center Boulevard. I'm a member of the Transportation Board in Annapolis, however. I have a considerable number of questions about the operation of the program, but I will ask a more general question, given your presentation of the background of your company. It is apparent to me, that's the reason for this question, that there is a focus on recreation in the use of these scooters and bikes, not just mobility. As a board member, my focus is on mobility, as it has been for a long time in Annapolis. And the idea of the last mile is certain, last and first mile is certainly a mobility-related concept. But the vehicles are obviously used for recreational purposes. In terms of your operation in other cities and places, particularly of this size, but hopefully with the same sort of traffic problems that we have, how long does it take for the operation of the whole program to become primarily connected to mobility and not recreation?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think we do see a lot of rides for, tourists ride these things. And I think because we operate in so many different cities and we have the same app, it is easy for someone to travel to a new place and ride the same scooter. But I think to increase ridership for mobility, it's something that we'd really look forward to work with the city leadership on. But I definitely hear your comment. It's something that we are aware of, something we want to work towards too.
And I think in that regard, Alderman Savage's recommendation that this city be looked at, mapped for those places like shopping centers where you would attract people who are primarily motivated to use the vehicle as a mobility device. I want to say to Alderman Savage, though, in a more critical mode, just as an aside, I'm a frequent rider of the bus system, the transit system, Alderman. It is not primarily a system that gets people out of town. It is a system that gets people from their homes to work within the borders of the city primarily, including me. And I come from beyond the border now in parole, and am very encouraged by the increasing regionalization of the transit system in Annapolis with the county. And I think what I hear today about that as a potential direction for the BIRD program is a good idea as well. If people working from parole, for instance, in my neighborhood, moving from parole to work in downtown Annapolis were aware that this was a mobility feature that they could access. I'm sure there would be more people using the vehicles for that rather than for riding circles around Church Circle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alderman Savage.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll take another look at the ridership data, but from what I recall, the routes that have the largest ridership in the city are the ones that go towards the outskirts, but I'll look at that again.
Thank you. All right. We really appreciate you guys coming and presenting and answering all of our questions, and look forward to future workings with you. And maybe we'll see you back here in another 6 months.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next up on our agenda is an update from our Transportation Board Chair, Kirk Riegel, but I do not see him. She is. I didn't know if Elvia was. She is. All right, she's leaving too.
Elvia? Elvia? Oh, okay.
Oh. All right. Carol, are you here to give an update on behalf of Kirk?
I'm supportive of the bird program, despite my comments, but
All right. Thank you very much. I guess we'll wait for next month's meeting to have an update. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second. All in favor?
Oh, but they're not here to. Oh, our top 5 projects for the year.
Oh, sorry. I'm taking back the motion to adjourn. Rewind. So yes, ID 18422 was the Transportation Committee's top 5 projects for the year. Opening a discussion on that and seeing if you had any that you wanted us to put forward for the Transportation Commission to research and discuss.
Yeah. What did you have in mind?
One of my projects that I would like for them to address is crosswalks and sidewalks in different areas throughout the city.
Yeah, that's a good one. My understanding is that we have in the past had a sidewalk inventory study done. I think that I've heard now Director Gerald mentioned that. So if they could dig up any of those old reports, that would certainly be useful. And
Okay.
I would add, I guess, my question on getting some of that comprehensive analysis of the transportation systems in the city.
Okay,
And I
that's a
guess
good one.
it might be something we could bring in the director of transportation in on, but I can't help but to feel that we need to do that. I think he committed to doing the review of the transit system in 2014. I think that 13 might be a good year to do. I don't know if they're
23.
interested in advancing that, but yes.
I was like, wow, we're going to do it in the past.
But I do think it'd be good to do to look at, considering all these other. I mean, we're having all kinds of transit alternatives at the moment. I forgot about the ferry, electric ferry, and we have the water taxi. There's just a lot to look at, and
I know.
And yeah, anything they can do to help provide, maybe, I don't want to expect them to do the analysis, but maybe helping to give us and DOT some, I don't know, recommendations on that. Maybe we need to bring in a consultant at some point.
Good idea. Still meeting.
Yeah.
1
We're
minute.
almost done.
All right, well, we will add those to their list. Thank you. Now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, and well, the other thing I guess would be any kind of electric. I think we okayed money to hire somebody to look at our electric system, EV system. So I guess we don't necessarily need their input yet. But
Yeah.
once we get that report, it'd be good to get their feedback. I can't think of anything else. I'm trying to get to 5 here.
It's all right.
Okay.
I didn't
To
want
be
it to go
continued.
past 5.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.